my feel-good breakfast show.
You're going to have to excuse the big kid in me right now. I am really excited about this. Southern Africa has a rich, that's an understatement, rich storehouse of archaeological sites, beginning with some of the earliest evidence of human origins and stone tool making found in the Sterkfontein caves. I've been there, it's amazing. Those related cave system, incredible, all part of the Cradle of Humankind World Heritage Site. That's where it began. Southern Africa is also home to tens of thousands of rock paintings, rock engravings made in the past 10,000 years by the ancestors of the San hunter-gatherers and Khoi herders to record their beliefs and customs. And here to tell us more about this amazing profession and some of the advancements that have been made in the field in his historical archaeologist and lecturer, Professor Antonia Milan, who didn't bring a whip, didn't bring a hat, didn't do a dive roll coming in here. I don't know how to speak to you if you even are a real archaeologist.
I'm not a real professor. I've never had a proper job.
And that's beautiful. The fact that people like you and I can find a place to carve out our life is amazing. You just happen to be doing it for all of us, carving out what history has been. So maybe a good way to start is on the practical side. So when you approach a site that you're going to now do one of your archaeological processes on, how does that look? What does that process involve?
Well, for a start, which archaeology? It's a huge subject. It covers, as you said, early humankind.
Yeah, all of history, I know.
All of history, and my interests are in the last 300 years. So where do you choose? I love that.
Okay, maybe then you've highlighted the fact that this is still something that plays out through individuals. So maybe talk me through one of the sites that you're most proud or excited about.
So, for instance, I'm interested in how people made their lives, family life, their households, and so on. So I'm interested in the environment they lived in. What did they build for themselves? How did they subsist? Who were they? How did they get there?
Yeah, because human life isn't always the big things, the big stadiums, the big battles. For me, what makes it so interesting is knowing what a Graham was doing 300 years ago or 10,000 years ago. What does the individual do in that space? You've obviously had the opportunity through your body of work to see an evolution, and obviously we love the fact that everyone's really interested in archaeology from one angle with Indiana Jones's latest iteration coming out. That's wonderful, but you work in that coalface. How has the industry changed and evolved over your time?
Well, for a start, in the old days, there used to be, for instance, a professor, an academic, who had their own research project. And they would gather around them the funding and the team and the whole
and it was all
framework.
Yeah.
And it was very dependent on them. So in that case, they were big projects. And it was both a teaching and a learning and an excavation project. So it could be as small as a square meter in a cave with a deposit of remains, which has to be very carefully removed. And
meticulously
removed. So that would be one example. Another one would be a big survey out in the Karoo or up the West Coast or something like that. So it very much depended on what you were looking for, the scale of your project, how you would approach it.
Do you find there is a lot more collaboration or interest, or just because there's so many more people and more information sharing right now, does it feel like there's a bit more gravitas added to the work that you're doing?
Well, this is the big change, is being able to talk to each other. I mean, when the internet first arrived in our lives, it just completely opened up a whole world where we could communicate with everybody. And that's one of the very lovely things about archaeology, is that you're not doing it for yourself on your own. You're doing it with other people, and you're constantly comparing what you've got with what other people have got. And so, yeah, and so it's an international process. It's not an individual thing.
Because you're doing it for everyone. It transcends. I love the fact that when we look in this way, through this particular lens, it's about everybody. It's about our combined life path. You've chosen to make this your purpose, and maybe you didn't have a choice. Maybe this was just where you were always destined to be, but there is a reason why you do this. And I've got to try to understand what we can learn out of this process. Why do you think it's so important that, especially for young people, all these talented, amazing young people that we're seeing on the show today, that they know about the past, but down to those sorts of details that often get overlooked or whitewashed with history books and propaganda and all that? Why is it so important to know where we come from?
To know where we come from, it's more it's the process of what people left behind. Okay, and so from that process, historians look at evidence and then they interpret it. The archaeologists produce the evidence and then interpret it. So, for instance, a document can be an artifact. A stone tool can be an artifact. A cave deposit can be an artifact. A village can be an artifact. What we're interested in is how a community operates and the environment in which they operate. And I think that's been one of the big changes, is rather than a single focus, you're now looking at landscapes.
What did it mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're looking at the animals, the plants, the people, how they interacted, how they changed, how things changed. And that can be in deep time. I mean, I don't know if you've been to the fossil park.
No.
Yeah. So that a huge deep time, and then the more shallow time that I'm interested in.
And the fact that I've got to sound deep time all the way. I absolutely love that. I love the fact that that speaks almost more, and this shift in the thinking speaks more to the lived experience right now, because those are the kinds of lessons we learn. And I think the crazy thing in my kind of pseudo-intellectual touching in this space is how similar people were back then and how they are now, which is crazy to me. I'm going to say on behalf of all the young minds that you've helped to guide and grow through this process, and the fact that you are still in there, in the space as it evolves, thank you so much for being that and for focusing on this area. We love the fact that Indiana Jones, yes, has made an entire generation go crazy about archaeology. In fact, 3 or 4 generations now, spanning over 40 years. And The Dial of Destiny is out now, and we are loving that. But I love the fact that we still have people, real-life archaeologists, championing this cause. She is going to put the hat and get the whip out and do a dive roll out of here in just a moment. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. What a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. And everybody can do archaeology, whatever your interest. You can be a hot scientist, you can be a historian, you can just like being outside in the sunshine when it shines.
When it shines. I love it. Just roll up your sleeves and get stuck in.
You can go underwater.
That's when it gets really, really interesting. So hopefully we've sparked your interest.